Roby Price, and welcome to my workshop.
Well, I'm just back from the big box store and I got a big box of lumber in the back. We're gonna finish out that wall from the cyclone to the fuse box. I want to be able to put cabinets where I want to, racks where I want to, and having a 3/4 inch plywood wall supported by studs is just the thing. So let's get that lumber out of the back. Let's get started. I'll see you over here.
Tools, jigs, and accessories for the shop. A wall to the fuse box.
I've already removed the shelf and that was attached to the sill plate. And when I look at this construction, I see some pretty heavy timbers all around the opening, and these timbers actually hold this into place. This is one large plate glass window. Now our wall is going to start here. That's where the plywood, I like to have a little plywood overlap, and it's going to go all the way over to here. Now my 2x4, I think I'm going to try to tie it into this. I won't know until I see it. But right now I'm going to take off this trim, and I think you've seen me do this plenty of times before. There is a transition strip between the top of the wall and the ceiling. You might call it crown. It's not that pretty. Neither here nor there. We've got to make a notch in these boards to accommodate for that. And I want to make the notch here as clean as I can. I'll clean up the rest of it with a jig saw. Now, what I have here is the first of 4 boards that were cut previously. This one was rotated to the back. Why is that important? Because as this blade comes down, what it wants to do is go into this slot right here so that it can make a clean cut. If I put a little jig right here, and that's what this is, this will prevent this blade from going down any farther than this, and then I can push it through. I'll get a clean cut on the first 4 boards. The last board won't be as clean. I'll take him, rotate him to the front, and cut him again. But this allows me to make a good clean cut in a lot of boards all at one time. If your saw has this feature, it's worth taking advantage of, because you can make dados with this thing, and you can make long cuts that are shallower than the full depth of the board. Well, my boards are about 109 inches, and I've got a stop set up over here, and I'll cut them all at the same time. I need 7 of them, so this will go pretty quick. This is the notch for the conduit that runs across the wall, and this is the notch for the electrical line that powers the cyclone. I wanted them separate, and they are in the wall behind you. So what I did with this was I marked the location. I cut it out with a Forstner bit, and you know, nice hole, but it doesn't need to be that nice, and it generated an enormous amount of shavings. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to use this as the template to mark, and then I'm going to cut them out with a jig saw. This is the green board that goes behind the insulation that the wall goes on top of, and I've got him spaced out here, and it's not pretty, but I don't care. This is a belt and suspenders, and anything I put on this wall is just going to be additional. So what I want here is I want a straight line even with this. And when I put the window casings in, you'll never see the green board that's sandwiched between this and the 2x4. So I'll put a couple of dollops on there, and I'll pop a straight line from the top to the bottom, and then I will cut it and discard the extra. The reason for the straight line is I've been trying very hard to maintain a straight line here as I go forward. And you know, even this building, some of the walls aren't as straight as I would like them to be. And it shows up in the plywood. So we'll keep it as straight as we can going forward, But right here, this is pretty critical. So I'll go back once this is put in place with a couple of beads of silicone in there to hold it to the wall. Then I'll cut it to this window and then we'll frame up our wall accordingly. Never underestimate how handy it is to have a couple of extra hands. Clamps like this, and when you set yourself up, it just makes everything so much easier. The insulation roll is set up on 15 inches, and I want to take advantage of that. Am I going to have a gap over here with no insulation? Yes. Do I care? Probably not that much. Yeah, it'll be a little cold right there. But I do have some of the green board in the back giving me something. And all in all, it's better than it was before. I've got cinder block, I've got the green insulation, and I've got an air gap. So it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to leave that blank and put my insulation right there and go ahead and space my gap here between the studs at 15 inches. This section is not going to have any insulation, so I'd prefer not to fight it too much. This is where I'm going to put the plugs for this particular outlet. I want to move them up higher. I actually like, in a shop, having the electrical sockets higher, about shoulder height. So I'll go ahead and drill this hole right here, get this out of the way, and put him in toward the back so I don't have to worry about a screw hitting it. Now the box that we're putting in is going to be one that's going to mount onto the plywood. So all I really have to do at this point is to take my line and push it through. This also keeps me from having to put a staple in here. Now between the plywood and this section of 2x4, I've cut about 3 inches. So if I just keep in mind 2.5 inch screws, I'm in good shape. So now what we need to do is plan out the hole for where this box goes so we can get our plugs installed.
Once you have your electrical box where you want him, go ahead and mark it. But when you mark it, make sure you don't mark to the outside of those layers. That's what's going to hold it in place. Clean up the edge with a combination square and you'll have a clear line for cutting with your jigsaw. If you use a jigsaw, and I don't see what else you would use, you need a hole start. The hole needs to be close to the line and the corners sharp for installation of this type of an electrical box. We can now use the screws to engage the back tabs and secure it to the plywood. The insulation fits tight in a 15-inch space just like it was designed to do. However, make sure that you use a staple gun to secure the tabs to the studs. Time will pull the insulation down and you'll have air gaps in the top of your cavities, and the insulation doesn't work well that way.
All right. Now, just checking for level, and it's good. All right, it's going to be good. Now, I know where the studs are. I'll go ahead and start sinking screws and secure this to the wall. And after that, we'll get after this plug. All right, I'm going to attempt this, but I want to say one thing first. If you're not comfortable with doing your own electrical, get an electrician. I am comfortable doing my own electrical, and each one of these cost a lot of money to install. Now, you see I've got 2 of them. We're going to attempt, by the way, we're going to attempt this sequence. I don't know that it'll go smoothly or in one take. It may be full of splices. We'll see. This looks like a bird's nest in the back. Basically what I've done is I've taken the black and connected the 2 terminals in the back, and then I've got another one that comes up here. That's going to connect to the wire right here. The same is true for the white and the ground. I've also got these things bent because we want some flexibility when we push it into the box. Now, what I like to do is I like to take the black and the white, take a little bit of electrical tape, and this is where the sequence could go south on us. Hold them together like this. Frankly, I like to put some electrical tape around them. and that is belt and suspenders, because that wire nut is going to do the work. But this, to me, it just seems like the right way to go about it. It also holds these two wires in place while I reach into my pocket and get the wire nut. All right, there's the black. Now, everything gets more complicated from here, but if you put a few bends in your wires, it helps. Now, you might be asking, why has he got red electrical tape? There's a good answer. I ran out of black electrical tape. It is that simple. Now for the ground, I don't pay quite as much attention. All I want to do is make sure it's connected up. With all these bent, it usually goes in pretty well. So, and I'm going to come over to this side. Take our wire nuts. They're on top like that, bend them down, get them into the middle of the box, kind of out of the way. And of course, it helps if it's right side up. All right, I've kicked the breaker back on. And if you thought the breaker was on while I was doing this, you need to hire an electrician. So I have one of these, and this is a good item. It'll blink and it'll talk to you when there's electricity there. This is also the other good item. You take that, you plug it in there. If there is a fault, it's going to show up on the red. If you get two orange lights right there, you're golden. Not only is your neutral connected, but your power is too, and your ground. So I'm in good shape here. Now I just put the cover plate on and this aspect is finished. I have removed the stud that was helping us line this out even with this window framing. And what we will do is we're going to come back with what I call a jack stud. Some people call it a cripple. It's going to marry up to our king stud, which is right here, and it's going to come up level to right here. And all of our other studs are going to be the same level. We're going to build up a wall right here with a 2x4 that runs even with this. We'll use some pocket holes to pull it in tight. I'm not going to try to recess from the other side and come all the way through. Pocket holes will be just fine. So we'll have our wall come up here, and this is about 6 feet. So we'll come 4 feet over here, which will give us a nice section, and then we'll clean up the rest of it over here, and we'll go back with another king stud on that side and then continue up. Now once we get that up, we can put this top plate in and it'll be secure at that point. We'll also have a 2x4 running up here, and it will attach to this with pocket hole joinery as well. So right now it's a matter of getting some 2x4s cut to the right length, and then we will set up the framing over here. This is about, it's less than 4 feet, probably about 36, 38 inches tall, and maybe a little bit more than that. And we'll go ahead and get our foam set up, our framing set up. This will go pretty quick. I've got my studs up over there under the window and insulation, and everything's going very well. I'm getting ready to cut the first panel. I've got 6 feet, so I'll need 2 feet here, and I'll need another panel with 2 feet. Now, I'm going to cut this with 3/4 of an inch on either side because I want the overlap on the 2x4 in the 4-foot panel, the first 4-foot panel I put in. And I like this overlap because that helps me get a good even cladding with my plywood. Additionally, the top part of this will not be cut up for the second part of the below wall. I want the second part of this to be above, and it will go from the header all the way to the top, and that'll make it a considerably stronger. So again, getting rid of the factory edge, but not just to trim this time. We want to take off 1.5 inches, which is the width of a 2x4. Well, my framing is in place, insulation is in place, and I've got my large wire for my cyclone pushed out around the corner, and we're getting closer to that corner. I did countersink these to get a good screw length into the sill, and it is stout. I have a king stud over there, and it's just sitting there, just to kind of give me an idea what's going on. We will not screw that into place until that wall over there goes into place. First steps. There's my panel. He's going to go in right here. He'll screw into these 2x4s and into this 2x4. The second panel will marry up on this one in order to try to create a more even step into the next sheet of plywood. And we're going to stop it right here. The intent is we can't really get what's above this window until I have a wall over there. I can't get my cripples in place here or on the other side, or my header beams in place until after I have something on the other side. So let's finish this first, and then we'll start working on that wall section. It's all going to be the same process. You put down the green board, you build your frame, you put your frame up, put your tap cons in, you screw into the ceiling, and then you insulate it, and then you put the plywood up. Nothing changes. So we're going to start moving a little quicker from here out. My wall's in place, and I'm ready to start tackling the area above the window. And the reason I'm so far over here is all the light whistling through will defeat the image. We want the light. It's always good to have natural light. That's why my workbench is going to be over here. I've got a jack stud right here, and right here I've got a cripple. Now this cripple and the one on the other side is what's going to support the header that runs across. And I want that header, just like this one, to line up with my existing wood that frames out the inside of the window. So I'll take a square, I'll put him right here and line him up nice and tight, and I will make a mark. Now take that over to the compound miter saw, give it a cut. I will make both of these separate. After that, we're going to start working on the header. I don't have a 2x4, 2x8, or anything of that nature right now, and I don't want to go to the home center to do something like that, to buy it. So we're going to do something a little interesting. Stick with me and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I've taken a few moments and I've gone to the miter saw and I've cut my pieces to length. And I've got a plate here, and then I've got a piece of junk 2x4, and it is junk. And I've got another piece of, this is a 2x3. And what I will do, I will sandwich those. This will give me more strength than I could ever possibly need. So I'll take a few screws and we'll screw this together. What I will do is I'll screw this top piece, and I've got, notice these are pulled in tight. The reason for that is it'll help keep it straight. If you screw these in with a bend in it, that bend will be locked in place once the screws are in place. So I'm not going to really use any glue because it's the shear strength in these plates that are going to be doing all the work. But these 2x4s are here because I'm probably going to end up toe-nailing my cripples in place to get this to work. I'm going to have to build that full panel and then put it in place, and that'll be interesting. But anyway, this is the first step, and after that, we'll start assembling the rest of the frame. Well, when I picked up my header, I was a little surprised with the weight. So I'm not going to try to push this whole beast in place. I'll build in place, and I think that'll be safer. Now, what I've done here in order to facilitate that is I have counter drilled with a very large bit, and I have taken a smaller bit and punched through. And that will be, this is pretty much what a pocket hole screw is going to do. And I've got my 2 screws right here. We'll just punch them in place. I want to point out one more thing. This sandwich right here isn't quite as wide as the 2x4. We have a gap back here. Now I'll put some of this green board behind it, but it is a gap, so it's not going to be a perfect fit. I will have casing underneath it. It's going to be infinitely better insulated than it was, but we just need to mind that. I don't want to push this all the way back. The other side is going to be a bit easier because I don't have the plywood up here. I don't have to use that pocket hole. And that'll do it. We'll start building on top of this. First thing I'll do is install the couple of cripples, and then I'll get the header beam on top. Then we'll start taking some measurements to put in our intermediate braces. I have completed all the 2x4s and insulation all the way around there and around the corner to the fuse box. I was on a roll, so when you've got things working your way, keep doing it. But right now, we finished with what I would call the 2x4 work. And it's time to start focusing back on the plywood. I've got this sheet right here, which is the sister sheet below, and I have taken some time to put all the screws in place, primarily because I don't like messing with this in the air. Now, I've also got a support right here. This will come out later, but this particular piece of plywood is going to rest, if I can get him up there. Take your time and do not lose your balance. Right like that. And that's another set of hands. So clamps aren't always the only thing. All my screws are pre-drilled. It's a matter of keeping a little bit of pressure and then putting a few of these screws in place. The rest will solve itself. There we go. We're in place. I am secure, so I'll just put the rest of these in. We'll move on to the next piece. Well, I've been moving around a lot of plywood, and it's all up. And it is stout. I think I could probably put anything on this, and it won't give me too much argument. What I've got to do now is I've got to start to focus on this window. I've got to get the casings in place, and that's going to involve some pretty good material. So I'm going to head to the back room, see what I can find. The first step is to put the sill in place, and that's where we will start. Well, I did find a piece that was wide enough to do what I wanted it to, and there was only one, so I'm happy I didn't have to cut up a new sheet of plywood to do this. It's in place. I've cut the corners out so that we can get our trim to go around it and our casings to go on the side. It is secured only with 4 screws, 2 on each side. When the casings go in, that will force everything down and force things to square. It's going to be a persuasion fit. So the next thing I'm going to do is go back to the back room, find another piece that's wide enough to do the top, and then hopefully there'll be some left over to do the sides. This is a big window. Now, in order to get this top piece in, I'm going to have to pull this out, and hopefully these 2 sides, I can keep them in place so that the window will stay put. I think it'll stay put anyway. But now I've got to get my flat bar and start working on this. That's the next step. I have my top piece out, and there is a gap. There is nothing holding this window in on top besides the molding that was there. Now, right now, this side piece is holding it in, and I'm fine with that. All is good. And this bottom piece is holding the window out this way. I don't think I've got a problem, but I'm not going to borrow trouble. So the trick is to get at least part of this in, because I need my casing to go back flush with this. So what I'll do, I'll take a chisel and I'll start whittling away at this until I kind of put a groove like you're cutting down a tree, and then I'll take my flat bar and pry that out. It's just going to take a little time. That's probably enough. All right, that's good. We can get our top plate in, a couple of screws, and that'll keep this window and it'll secure it. So now we've got to go to the back room and find another piece of plywood.
I have a diagonal in the window, and that gives me just enough room to put in one side of the casing top plate. Now the other side takes some persuasion, and I have some of that, so I'll use it. Once in place, the friction fit won't let it go anywhere. I'll follow up with a couple of screws, 2 at the very ends and a couple in the middle. I don't want this board to sag over the course of time.
With the top plate in, we can put our sides in now, and it is a simple matter of getting them cut to the right size, maybe a little bit over, such that a touch of persuasion is all you need, and that'll be fine. That's a friction fit up there, it's not coming down. So now a couple of screws, and I'm in place. Well, I have my side molding in place here, and I want a 1/4 inch reveal. So I'll take my tri-square, my combination square, set for 1/4 inch. Make the mark. I'll take this over to my compound miter saw and make the cut. My molding is cut to length, and now I'm going to use my combination square with the same measure to give me the same reveal on top and on the sides. I'll scoot this one in just a touch in a minute, but right now I want to get that end secured in place, and I'm using 1 1/4 inch brads. I've got my far side flush up against the edge there, so I know my measure is good there, and I've also made a cut so it's good and clean. Now on this side, it is as simple as making a mark right there, taking it over to the compound miter saw, and then we'll put this top trim in place. Well, it's the same story as the last time. We're going to put them in with some 1 1/4 inch brads. Well, you might think I was finished, but you'd be wrong. I'm not. I still have the skirt to put in. So I've got my combination square. I've got it set to a 1/2 inch. I'm going to take this, butt him right up against that. And that's the measure on that side. I'll take the same measure on this side and make a mark. Does it have to be perfect? No. We'll get it pretty close to center when we do it. Now, what I will do is I'll cut these edges at about 30 degrees, 35 degrees on the miter saw, and then we'll put it in right up under the sill. Well, I'm using a couple of F-clamps to hold my skirt in place, and yes, I did check both sides. I've got a 1/2 inch on either side. Using the same nails, I know that I've got enough clearance between the electrical going to my cyclone and the conduit running through here. I know where it is and I know the depth. And these nails will be just fine. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. We got a lot done. We started from the cyclone, back to the fuse box, and put in wall, 2 electrical outlets, and a window casing. Not the most exciting, but it needed to be done. And it's not the prettiest, but it is the most functional. Sheetrock won't touch what a plywood wall can do for you. I can attach anything to this wall and I know it will hold. I don't have to find a stud to do it. The plywood will do the job. You can't get that with sheetrock, and you can't get that with cinder block either. So this has been a good project and a necessary one. The next time we're going to be looking at some dust collection and electrical. And it's not going to be on the wall, it's going to be on the ceiling. So I hope to see you there in Roby's workshop.